Hey everyone, I'm Marc Bachli. I'm one of the colorists here at Picture Shop in Toronto, and I've been in the post-production field now for 22 years. I've started my career in post-production as an assistant editor. I slowly moved away from that into directing of photography and moved then back into post, where I found my love for color correction. My job as a colorist is to help tell the story that the directors of photography and the directors want to portray and tell and create mood and emotion. And we do all that, on set through lighting and lensing, depth of field, makeup, wardrobe, etc. But we are also able to help push that out a bit further in color correction via isolation of subjects, color temperature, cutting out shapes, etc. And today I really want to talk about some of the advanced tools in DaVinci that allow us to isolate objects, because really telling stories is about bringing the focus to the attention to a subject on the screen. The footage today is from a show I colored called The Quest. It was for Disney, shot on the Sony Venice, and they shot with the XOCN ST codec. This provided a lot of fidelity in the image, and we were able to key and pull secondaries without much trouble. And this codec is actually becoming a lot more popular as well in the industry, and the Sony Venice 2 is becoming like a very popular camera to shoot with. I think it works really nicely with post-production workflow, from dailies to color to finishing as well. So the camera talks directly to the Resolve, so even though it's not a raw format, we are able to get metadata out of it, and Resolve will actually automatically pick LUTs to pre-balance the image when you're shooting with the XOCN. We want to show our friends, our DP friends, all of these tools so that you've got a better understanding of how you can shoot things, or how you might be able to get out of trouble, or if you're worried about over/under exposure, what sort of range and latitude we have now in these post tools to better enhance those images and get you guys out of trouble if you're in trouble. Okay, so in this first example, we're going to talk about how color temperature is really important in creating that first step of separation between the subject and the background. So what I'm going to do is add a node and just balance out this image. It's always important to start with a balanced image so that we can add other colors and then ultimately separate them further using parallel nodes or with a keyer. In Resolve, the keyer is called vectors. So we'll just get this to somewhere suitable, and you'll see right away that the colors and tones, the background, it's all sort of a wash of orange, and I don't find that they're standing out as good as they could be. So what I'm going to try to do is create some color separation using color temperature. So what I'll do is I'll add color temperature adjustment here, and I'm going to go over the top here. I'm going to go a little bluer than I might go in usual, just to make a point here on how using color temperature is useful in separating tones. So we'll bring this down a little bit, bring up the black levels. The image is of course too blue, and we want to pull some more red forward. So there's a couple ways we can do this. We can go back to our balance node using a parallel node, and we will basically isolate the skin tone using a vector here, just so that their skin and some of their uniform outfit is coming through. We'll denoise that a bit. Now you can see her skin is coming through, and I've got the ability now to correct just her skin. So in this example, we're showing how the background is blue, the foreground and their skin tone is more orange, and you're creating this immediate separation, and the viewer's eyes should be going, of course, to the brightest part and the part that is in contrast with the background, which of course is blue. So you can see where we started here If I turn off the nodes, you can see we started here, and it just doesn't seem like it's a very interesting image with so much orange compared to where we end here. Okay, so our next example, we're going to talk about parallel nodes just a little further. And I'm going to start off with this image here. And I'm just going to give this a real quick balance. Again, we're just trying to make clean light here, and you can see on my scopes that I'm just trying to make white light. If we go to my waveform, you can see a lot of white in the waveform, and that just shows me that there's a balanced image. If, for instance, I take one of the channels down, the red channel down, you'll see that the scope has no longer gone white, and it's quite contaminated on the image. So what I'll do is I'll undo that, make some nice white light here. We'll add a little bit of color in the blacks to make the light a bit cleaner in the bottom. We'll add a bit of saturation. And here's a good base to start our parallel node example. So what I'm going to do here is create a lot of color temperature. We're going to go blue again here. And you know, the client may say, hey, we want this skin tone pulled forward, make it brighter, make it redder. And I might try using just a regular node to do this operation. You can see how much contamination there is everywhere, and I really can't adjust that key to get just her skin, which is what I'm trying to do. So in this case, because I've balanced the image in the first node, I can use that information and put it into my blue node. So I'll give you an example of that. I'm going to key her skin here, and you can see right away what a better result I get with this simple key. I don't get any of that blue contamination because I'm pulling from the first node here, which has balanced exposure and color. Here's her face, and I'm just going to do this quickly. I'm going to just denoise it a little bit, and I'm going to boost the color. And we'll bring up the fireball part here, you know, and you know, maybe we'll add a little bit to the key here, this part here, to get the fireball part of our orange calculation. And you can right away here see with the on-off how much of a difference that has made using a parallel type node. And of course from here we can adjust our blue node if so desired to make it darker, for instance, and desatch it perhaps to get a bit of a better look. You can see our original key is still holding up. You can play that here. And there's the shot. So again, just to recap, this was parallel nodes, but again, using color temperature to separate our hero talent from, of course, the background. Okay, our third example, we're going to talk about log mode. So in color, we've got 3 sets of tools to control color luminance. We've got our primary color wheels, which are here, and that's our lift, gamma, and gain. Inside of the primaries, we can switch into log mode, and this gives us more fidelity over the low range and, of course, high range. And what the numbers mean, it's basically millivolts, and my range in the high right now is 550, so anything above 550 here would be adjusted, and I can show you that here. If I just boost up my highlights, you'll see on the scope that only the range above 550 is now being affected. If I am in my primaries and I do the same adjustment, you'll see that almost the whole scope is moving minus the low range. Of course, if I go into my log controls again, the low range will now simply be adjusted anything below 110. So you'll see that I'm just adjusting the very lowest black levels. So where this is useful, I'll just reset this and I'll go back a step, is of course in controlling the highest highlights and the lowest shadows. So in this example here, I've got a lot of white cloud that's distracting to my eye. I'm finding it's the brightest part in the image, and I really just want that to be toned down, but I don't want to use a key. If I use a key, the branches will sort of have some ringing to them, and it won't be a clean key, and I won't be able to pull that white light down without a lot of artifacting and buzzing and things that generally worry me when I'm using the keyer. So sometimes it's better to use tools where the operation creates a soft sort of bell curve type effect. That would be curves, and of course the log wheels, and HDR, which we'll talk about in a moment. If I'm just looking to bring down these highlights, I can tell from my scope here that this piece of cloud is basically has values above 768. So I'm going to take my high range ring and I'm going to go, let's go to around 700-ish. And in log mode, I'll bring that cloud information down, adjust this a little bit more, so that it's sort of matching the other clouds surrounding it. And you can see what that's doing there. It's creating more of a balanced image. It's not creating a clump of light. And again, that's all done in using the logarithmic tool. And of course, if we're interested in a little bit of black adjustment and we don't want to go into the primaries where a black adjustment is quite severe, we can just go into our logarithmic mode here and set that low range to, let's go 150, and we'll bring up the black detail, and maybe we'll add a little more blue into it to complement her outfit. And you can see the on-off there of what that's done. Her skin is basically being untouched in both of these operations. So that was log mode. Now we're going to talk about the next color operation, HDR mode. And you can use HDR mode in SDR color space. It's totally works fine. People think sometimes you need to be working with an HDR color space for this tool to work, but it works just fine. It's still using the ranges in your SDR values. In this example, we've got a horse, traveling down a road, and the horse originally was a little bit too bright. So I've already done a pre-balance here, which you can see on node 1, and the image looked like this, and we've gone, again, just to make white light, which you can see on the scope here, to balance the image out so that we have more control should we need to use a parallel node. In this case, I want to bring down the horse, or maybe I want to bring it up. Well, I'll have full control with the HDR tools, and I'll show you guys those now. The HDR tool set has different parameters to control different levels of light. So in this setup, we've got our dark control, shadow control, light, and if you click here, you're going to have your highlight, and then you're even going to have specular, which would be like a candle or a reflection off of water, would often be specular light. In this case, we're going to try and see if the computer can find where the range of the light in the horse is. So basically, I'm going to open up this panel here, and I'm going to use my highlight control on the panel here, and I'm going to see if I can just get the horse. So right now I'm using the highlight, which seems maybe too aggressive, and now I've gone to just the light mode here. So you can see that in HDR mode I can, using the zones, pull out just the horse, and as I slide these around I can actually adjust the zone tonal range, which is then just that quality of light that is the, the horse. So I'm going to just refine this, what essentially some people would call a key, but it's a little softer than a key and it has better fall off. So now that I've got the horse isolated, I can, with my highlight control, adjust just that horse in this HDR dynamic range tool kit. So whereas the primaries will give you a much broader range of light control, for instance, if I bring up highlight in primaries, when I try to adjust the light levels, it's grabbing everything. It's grabbing the whole image and it's not really focusing on the horse. So we're not really isolating the horse. But of course in our HDR option, if we go to the HDR tool set, we hit highlight, you can see we can carefully adjust the quality of the horse. You know what, maybe we'll make it a little bit brighter. Okay, so that was the HDR tool set for creating, again, more separation in our images. So in our next example, we're going to show how we can use curves and vectors to create more uniformity across this shot that we have here. So what I didn't like in this shot is that we've got a really concentrated and rich blue sky on the left and a different quality of sky on the right. And I want those to be more uniform. I don't want to be distracted by the sky. It's not important for the shot. I want to bring these characters forward and I want the sky to be of a neutral space. So I've already balanced out the image here like I've done in other examples. This was the raw shot without a grade, and I've simply put a balance on it, and that balance of course creates the disparity between the two blues, which again is of course there in the natural photography. It's just that we bring it out when we balance the shot and make it put it in linear space. So what I'll do first to balance out this image is use my curves palette, which can be found here, and right away I've got this little node here on the bottom, this little nub of graph that shows me where this blue value is. And the only reason it's doing this on this chart is because blue seems to be the most predominant thing in this shot, and it's basically telling me that. So with the curves enabled, I can actually click on the sky here and it will bring up a curve operation here for me to adjust that sky. Now what's great about curves is that it does a broad roll off of a tone or color instead of a sharper roll off or clip that a keyer might do, where it's only focusing on a specific blue and everything outside of that specific correction falls to the wayside. And in those operations you can get a lot of buzzing and noise and things that aren't natural to the image. Curves, it's more of a smooth, rounder roll off, and it's going to avoid all of those contaminations that you get with vectors. So here you can see right away, if I bring down this curve, and right now I'm in the hue versus saturation. So it's basically taking the blue hue, and I am selecting the hue, and I'm bringing down this node so that the saturation of the blue comes down to match the right side a lot better. Now, it's not the same quality of light in terms of luminance. You can see that although I've got the hue pretty good, it's still a deeper tone. And there wouldn't be enough value in that blue for me to go into blue luminance and just adjust the blue. So in this particular case, I'm going to also employ a parallel node again to go back to the first node here. And I'm going to select the blue tone up here using vector scope or keyer. And I'm going to highlight that to see sort of what it selected. And it selected some of the white ranges on the right part of the screen, which I don't want in my selection. So I'm going to just simply take out the highlight range there on that side of the screen. And now I'm focusing on the left side, which is where my problems began. So I'm going to soften this out a little bit so that there isn't noise or jitter. And now that I've got a key, I'm able to isolate this area, and if I want to, in my primaries, I can not only desatch it further, but I can also add luminance to it. You can see now I'm getting a lot closer to the quality of light on my right-hand side of screen behind the trees. Might just soften this out a bit more. And we can give that a play. And you can see now my shot has a more uniform tone in the background, using curves to adjust the hue, and then using the parallel node through a keyer to adjust the luminance. In our next example, we'll talk about how we can use a black and white tool in Resolve to really pull the subject forward, but in black and white. If we create a black and white image by just bringing down the saturation, we'll have no more control over the RGB values, and that makes coloring pretty hard. We can, at that point, really just adjust light values and create contrast. So another way to handle black and white images and create that separation that we're always looking for is to use our RGB mixer. So once we're in our RGB mixer, we can select the monochrome tab, and now we still have the ability to select the red, green, and blue ranges within the shot. I can now adjust just his shirt and bring him either forward or down, because of course his shirt is in the red tonal range. This was super useful in the movie Schindler's List, which was actually shot on film in black and white. And they had a huge crowd scene with the girl who was, of course, in color, wearing, they had her dressed in a red dress, and they had a red filter on the camera that was recording black and white. And what this did was bring her forward away from the rest of the crowd that wasn't wearing that red dress. And essentially this operation is doing the exact same thing. It's still seeing the color through the black and white through the RGB mixer, and allowing me full control over that red shirt. And of course it'll work for the trees too. The trees will have a green value, and I'll bring that range up and down depending on what I'm trying to focus on. The trees probably aren't so important, so I'll bring that range down. Here I've got blue range as well, and I think this fellow here has got a blue hoodie, and if we raise up the blue, you'll see that I'm adjusting the color of that hoodie. Again, just another way to create separation and bring these subjects off the screen. The next example is something that is brand new to Resolve, and it's a very powerful feature. It's using the neural engine. It's using artificial intelligence and machine learning to figure out what the depth and volume and focus planes are in the image without any user input at all. It's almost like it can see the image and it knows what is in the foreground, what is in the midground, what is in the background. And not only that, it will pick a subject, and if that subject's moving in the image, it will stay focused on that subject within its plane, so that if you're isolating that subject on that plane with brightness, he or she won't be going in and out of brightness. The computer will actually stick onto that person on that focus plane as they're walking towards the camera, for instance, and your brightness levels will stay the same. So basically what we've got here is, again, another horse shot, and the horse is traveling from the background to the foreground. And if I turn off the grade, you'll see that the background essentially has no smoke. The shot that this was joined to had a lot of smoke in the background, and of course now we've got this shot and there's no smoke. So the goal with the depth matte is to create a matte of the horse and our character so that I can put haze or smoke or fog, whatever, into the background so that our shots are matching up. And we do that using the depth matte, and I can show you how that works. Basically, we've got the horse as the forward plane. His nose would be the object that's closest to camera. Then we've got our rider, which is even back further on another plane, and you can see the way the computer is actually distinguishing the horse from our rider until they come closer, and then they both come into the same plane. The areas that are black, this is a matte, an alpha matte. The areas that are black are going to bring through my fog layer, which I'll show you now. So in Resolve, we've got something called fast noise, and fast noise allows us to create like haze, smoke, fog. Can adjust the parameters, and it's quite fast. It's not very taxing on the GPU. So if I go back into my depth matte here and I turn off the preview, I'll get my image, and here's my fast noise node, and you can see if I turn that off what it's actually doing to the background. So again, the objective here was to create a matte using the neural network, because I could never create this matte correctly enough and cut a shape to put another color or tone or smoke in the background. So we basically used the depth matte to do that, and then we've employed fast noise to put that noise into the background. And with some keyframing, we were actually able to keyframe the smoke so that she's riding from the smoke into no smoke to give a bit more of a realistic feel, like the smoke has volume in the shot. And you can see what it's doing. You can see the horse actually starts off in smoke and comes forward out of the smoke. The background smoke level stays the same. And our rider actually has some puffs of smoke that she's traveling through. You can see it here. She's got some smoke on her chest back here, and as we come forward, it starts to dissipate, and she comes into a clearer frame. You can adjust the far limit and the near limit of the depth matte to sort of let the computer know where you want to have something come in and out of range, basically. So if I adjust the far limit now, you can see I get a beach ball right away, because it is quite taxing on the processors. What it's doing now is it's buffering. It's building a map of the shot so that I can quickly now adjust the limits without having too much more beach balling. So you can see now with adjusting the far limit, I can select exactly on what focus plane I want the computer to think where they're at. I can set that, and now as she travels forward in the shot, she'll stay in the matte so that she's coming out of the smoke. And if I adjust my near limit now, further down, I can have it so that she is completely removed from the matte. So these are limits you can play with, but the computer actually gets it pretty accurate right out of the gate. It's almost like it knows where the different regions and layers of the shot are, and it starts to subtract those layers based on foreground, midground, and background. Okay, so the last tool we're going to talk about today is something that also uses the neural engine that is new in Resolve 18, and it's called Smart Mask. And this is a tool that kind of replaces where we might have used a power window in the past, but not have had a lot of confidence in how that power window might have been reacting with the background. Give you an example of that right now. In this shot here, where we've got a witch and a light, I've got a balance already, so we won't rebalance the shot. But if I was to bring up her values using just a basic power window, you would see that the background is also lightening with her. And for many people, that might not be the desired result. And even softening that out, you're still going to get the blue in the background getting lightened when the objective was just to lighten the witch. The way we can do that, the way we can isolate her quickly without having to cut a shape and then manually keyframing that shape onto her, which is basically an effects type operation, and we do this in VFX, but it's come now to the point where we can do some of these operations in color correction and have the same fidelity that they might have gotten in VFX land, and quickly, much quicker than sending a shot from here to VFX, then having it brought back in can sometimes take hours. So basically, in order to have the computer cut a shape, we'll add a new node. We will go to our Magic Mask tool, and although it's a person, the machine's not going to notice that it's a person, so we're going to actually select Object. I've got Person here, and then you can select different shapes on a person. For instance, you can have the computer draw a matte if you've got just the arms exposed, or just clothing can draw a matte around a face, or even hair if you need to change the color of hair. But in this example, we're going to use Magic Mask Object, and we're going to go to the first frame. We're just going to simply draw a shape around the witch to tell the computer where the basic outline is that we want to cut out to create a matte for. And it just takes a minute to process that, and you can see when I click my matte view, you can see quickly how it's cut a very detailed shape around this witch, even getting into these areas that might be super complicated to cut out. And you can see now it actually missed a little piece here, and I think if I go to better quality here, yeah, you can see right away when I selected better, it removed this area from the key, which is the intention because it's part of the background and we only want to bring her forward. What we have to do now is process this shot, and we'll process it with the matte view on so that you can see how when the light comes in front, it's actually recognizing that that light is on a whole nother plane, and it's subtracted it from the matte. So it knows what's foreground, the light, the staff, midground, the subject matter, and then of course the background. This is using the, I'm sure it's using the depth matte in some capacity, but it seems to work a lot quicker than the depth matte tool itself, but it's still using these planes to cut this shape out. We have now got control over just the witch. We can give her some more warm light, and it's not affecting our background. And that can play out almost live. So super powerful tool. The last two neural engine tools, again, new to Resolve 18. Super powerful, making our jobs of isolating the image basically into components now a lot easier, so that we have full focus on what's important to tell the story. I think these tools are only going to get better with time, and we'll move away from our simple power window tools to create isolations and move more towards actually creating complicated mattes, on a per shot level. We'll see how far this takes us. The lines really are getting blurred between color correction and VFX, because of course traditionally this type of complicated matte drawing would have easily only been achievable in VFX land. So that's it. I hope everyone's enjoyed the samples. I'm available through email if anybody would like to contact me, reach out to me for further insight on the things I've tried to explain as quickly as I could in the time I had today. But it was a pleasure walking you through this, and hopefully these tools help you make better decisions on your film sets, and allow you to empower you to know sort of where we're at in post-production color, and allowed you to make really educated choices on set.